Hello there. Good to see you again, and thanks for watching. As promised, this week I'm going to return to the thorny problem of container ship fires, an issue that we've covered regularly in the pages of HCB and indeed on these videos for quite a while now. And if you've been following this topic, you'll know that the insurance companies in particular are concerned about it, as are container lines, that there is a seemingly unstoppable list of fires aboard container ships at sea, causing vast amounts of damage and fatalities to ship's crew as well. And last week I sat in on a webinar organised by TT Club and the UK P&I Club, the first of three that they're planning to run over the next 2 months. I think there's one in February and one in March. And focusing this one on cargo and how important it is to get the cargo right, which is, as you probably can imagine, not an easy task. As ships get bigger and bigger, the actual job of making sure that all the cargo that's going on board is properly declared, properly packed, properly stowed, properly segregated, is next to impossible. And so the lines themselves have done a lot of work in this area to try and head off the problems before they occur. Now, Stuart Edmonston of the UK P&I Club mentioned that hardly a day goes by without a container fire somewhere. Quite often those are before loading on the way to the port, or after discharge at the destination end. But each of those has the potential to cause a big issue, a big live issue while at sea, leaving ship's crews the difficult task of trying to fight a fire or deal with the aftermath of an explosion on a ship that may be pitching and rolling in the open ocean, where outside help is going to be a while arriving. And we've seen that time and time again. And the interesting thing I've found about this, the most interesting thing about this webinar, were comments from Uffe Ernst Fredriksson, who's head of cargo management, I think it is, at Maersk Line, and also head of the president of the Container Owners Association, and who described the efforts that some of the major lines have gone to put in place systems that interrogate bookings before the goods go onto a ship, just to see if they can spot where errors are or where dangerous goods might be going hidden, undeclared or misdeclared, because it is those that cause so many of the problems. One of the issues that's raised is that while the big lines have gone about this with gusto over the last few years, they haven't all taken the same approach. And what with vessel sharing agreements and slot swapping and so on and so forth, it's quite possible, he said, for a cargo that's been rejected by one carrier because it thinks it's a bogus cargo, might end up slipping through the net at another carrier and then end up back on the first carrier's ship. While both he and Peregrine Stores Fox, who was the other speaker from TT Club, agreed that the OMDG code is complex and difficult to follow in many ways, and especially for those who are not accustomed to using it, that's not really an excuse. But I think what Uffe was really getting onto was the fact that it's inevitable that some bogus cargo is going to end up on the ship. And so Maersk developed a couple of years ago now a system of what they called risk zone modelling, so that goods that are declared as explosives, say, are kept well away from the accommodation block and from the engine room. Because if an accident does occur, you don't want your seafarers getting hurt. Apart from the fact that you don't want your crew getting killed, you want them to be able to fight the fire. Also, you don't want the engine out of action. You don't want a ship afloat with no propulsion. And so the highest consequence dangerous goods should be kept really away from sensitive areas, and also away from the middle of the ship, because if you get an explosion in the middle, then you've got stability and vessel integrity issues to think about. And so explosives certainly, and other things that could be dangerous in that respect, like polymerizers and self-reactives, should go at either end, on and not on the deck. Indeed, he said the underdeck cargo, any IMDG cargo stowed under deck, should be able to be extinguished in the event of a fire with carbon dioxide. Everything else goes on deck. And this was worked up. Maersk didn't keep it to themselves. They got a lot of the other lines involved, and class societies, and the National Cargo Bureau and Axis Technologies, and I think at least the Danish Maritime Authority, and worked that up and put out a white paper, that was published by the Cargo Incident Notification System, SINS. It was at the end of 2019 now, with hints and illustrations about where to put what cargo. And Axis Technologies has weighed in with an element to its HAZCheck system to match IMDG code numbers, UN numbers, against those risk zones, which is all very helpful. Talk at the webinar moved on to whether indeed this shouldn't be approach that was included in the IMDG code, and I think probably if it's approved, then it would make sense. The IMDG code, as you know, has already got extensive pages and pages about segregation and stowage, and yet, we have a situation where when an incident does occur involving dangerous goods, then it can escalate, because if you've got an explosion, then all manner of goods are going to be impacted, can set off another fire and so on. Saw this with Flaminia, the fire that started due to spontaneous polymerization spread to other tanks, other dangerous goods. And so there was a more broad discussion, in fact, in response to some questions from the audience, about whether it's not time for a review of the IMDG code. I was sort of sitting there screaming inwardly, saying, yes, but don't forget multimodal harmonisation. You can't stray too far away from the UN model. But I think, as Peregrine pointed out, there are parts of the code that haven't been looked at for 40 years or more. And it was originally drawn up, in the days before the major arrival of containerization, and certainly not prepared for the size of container ships that are plying the world's oceans at the moment. It's going to be a big job, and I'll probably, if anybody volunteers me for doing any work on that, I might be busy, I think. But watch out for that. Watch out also for the second and third webinars in this series, because they are of interest to anybody who's involved in the shipment or carriage of dangerous goods by sea. And it's good to see that there does seem to be now at least some level of cooperation across the industry. What's needed now is getting to the carriers that are putting this stuff into the supply chain. Those are my thoughts for today. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next week. Not sure what I'll talk about then, but I'm sure there'll be something happen between now and then to inspire me. Look after yourselves. See you soon. Bye.